Hi everyone. I invite you all to connect for a moment during this transition of alchemy between silica and phosphorus. I wanted to connect today because I hope you all are having a nice moment of connection related to the transition between silica and phosphorus, because in our alchemical journey, this is one of the most important transitions. So why is today so important for this alchemical journey? Basically, as we have been talking throughout the entire year, the code of the Philosopher's stone is very important. The code between the stone and the sword, when we talk about Excalibur. So the stone refers to silica, and phosphorus refers to the sword. So when we talk about the sword in the stone, what we are referring to is the connection between phosphorus and silica. Silica is basically the structure of all our technologies, but also our cells, the structure of everything. And phosphorus is the structure of our DNA. So silica is the one that structures the crust of the planet, is the one that structures the cell of our planet, the mountains, the crust. And in the same time, phosphorus is the one that structures the DNA. So when all the chemical elements, where all the DNA bases are contained in this structure that is the double helix, that double helix is created by phosphorus. So that's the connection between the two structures of life. So one, the silica, structures the inorganic, and phosphorus structures the organic. So basically, when phosphorus and silica, the two structures, get together, what they do is to create life, create the structure of reality. So it's basically phosphorus, a lightning that comes through a cell, or that comes through a structure, a solid structure, which is the stone or the planet. So of course, we can compare it with technology, because our phones, our technology, computers, all of it is created with silica, and let's say that the lightning, which is electricity, is the one that gives current to everything. So what we learn today, what we go through today, is the change from the inorganic structure to the organic structure. So from now, what we can understand is that the structure of life appears for the first time, because basically phosphorus is the one that will give a way for life to find light within, so we can bring light everywhere. So an interesting and controversial code here is that phosphorus is the one that brings the light in our DNA. So when we talk about Phosphoros in Greek, we are saying the one that bears the light, the one that brings the light. And in Latin, the same word is Luciferus, which is Lucifer. So it's basically the same name. So when we talk about archangels in mythology, an archangel is basically radiation from the structures of the elements, the radiation of the cosmos. So basically all the radiations that exist in the universe are basically archangels. And when we talk about archangel, when we talk about Lucifer, we're referring to the archangel related to light, so the colors, the visible aspect of the universe. So basically in the story we can interpret that Lucifer is the one that brings the light or the radiation in a way that we can perceive it through the senses. So another thing that we can interpret here, which is the two paths that we can take, is phosphorus here is the one that brings the light, so we can see and perceive reality, the beauty of everything. But at the same time, what we have is that everything that we perceive is just a fractalization. It's not the truth, it's not reality, it's just a perception of it. So that's why when we talk about Lucifer, we can have these two opinions. One is the light that allows us to see everything, the beauty of the universe, that allows us to perceive this reality in the beauty of this reality, but at the same time is the one that doesn't allow us to see the truth, because we see just fractals, just distortions of what we actually are. So it's kind of a fake reality, a lie, let's say. So that's why also we can understand here that we can feel trapped in senses. So when we feel senses, when we perceive everything with senses, we are being fooled or tricked by a trickster, which is perception. So we can be trapped in this illusion of this reality. So what happened is that we are following the senses. So when we start to figure out yourself within, suddenly you realize that the only way to find the truth is through nonsense. You can find the codes inside nonsense. So this doesn't mean that one is wrong, one is right. It simply means that all reality is distorted, but at the same time we can perceive everything because it's distorted. Entonces, la distorsión es lo que nos permite ver la belleza. So, for example, if light wouldn't move, if light wouldn't have vibrations, waves, and distortions, we wouldn't be able to see everything. Like it would be nothing, just literally non-existence. So that distortion is the one that allows us to be here, to connect with everything, to relate to this reality. So immediately when we start to think that everything is a hologram, everything is fake, and so we are trapped in this matrix and we have to escape this to see the truth, immediately when we locate ourselves in that point of view, we need the creation of an enemy. that to say we are trapped by someone. And that's when we commit kind of a mistake, because there's no one actually to blame. Lo único que podemos hacer cuando tomamos conciencia es refocalizar o cambiar la perspectiva de esa observación o de esa percepción. So what we can do actually, what we start to realize with consciousness about this holographic reality, is just to change our perspective. It's just to perceive it in a different way, to change our perception of reality. So we always adjust to a new focus, to see a different way. So that's why when we start to enter in this point of view, there are no enemies in reality. There are only distortions. And every distortion is actually a perception. The colors that you are seeing right now here, they are distortion. So that's why, for example, all of these colors are just fake. They are just perceptions. Like, for example, the green of this plant. Yeah, the plant is not green. It's actually the light of the sun heating the particles of this plant. And because the plant is absorbing the red colors, so it expels the blue and the yellow ones. And we see the green. But actually, that's not green. It's just here. So that's why when we see an enemy, it's actually the enemy absorbing all our light energy and refracting towards us our distortion, our darkness. That's why when I start to calibrate myself, everything that reflects to me is completely different. That's why all we have is the change of perspective, the change of focus in things. And I think the focus is very important to understand, because the darkness in our Western society is summarized in the concept of the one that bears the light, which is literally phosphorus, the element that we start to connect with from tonight to the next 13 days. So that's why in this week we're gonna start working with the darkness, therefore phosphorus, and therefore we're gonna start working with our DNA. And of course, who is this snake of light? The snake of light is the snake from the tree of life, DNA, that bites the apple. Yeah? That's why we're going to be working with the snake of light and the snake of darkness, that both of them shape our DNA. Is basically the phosphorus that shape our path of light. So this is basically the greatest mission that we ever had. So that's why I think today is so important for me to explain that that everything that I explain, every mission that I do, everything that I try to show to you about this and that, the stories and the trips and all of that, and maybe most of you say, I don't understand, what is this? It doesn't matter. The whole point is perspective, to change a focus into that story. That's the most important thing. So it's not a matter of understanding, it's a matter of changing perspective. So that's why, since always, but mainly now, I think it's so important for me to share with all of you, why am I connecting science with myth, with the match in the World Cup? Because all of that doesn't have to make sense. All of those connections can be only connected when you listen to them through nonsense. When you listen with nonsense, you kind of start to change the focus. But when you try to understand it with senses, you get trapped into not understanding. So those who dare to work for consciousness right now, we have to get to understand that there's no enemy outside, and there's no one that we have to defeat in this game. That what we actually have to do is to realize that all there is just perspective. That all there is the shift of our perception of reality. In this way, consciousness is never about being right. Consciousness means to contemplate every point of view without judging any of them. And the only thing that we do is just to change ourselves from one place to another so we can change our perspective. And because I work with Earth, then I change from country to country to change perspective. I change from one culture to another to observe in a different way. And because reality is a game of senses, to speak through games is really easier. It's much easier to speak about all of this from the game than from war. So imagine about this, how interesting this is. Today, in these games of mind, we have today a game between England and Norway, the two countries that define the navigation system of our mind in the last 1,000 years. The two countries that modified our perception on how we navigate the reality. So how important that moment is for all of us to pay attention in the game. And a few hours after that, we have Argentina and Switzerland, which basically is Mother Leto, which is the mother of the sun and the moon, Argentina, silver, with, in the other side, Switzerland, which is gold, the gold of Switzerland, the place that broke time with CERN, so the heart of time is out of place, which is the whole story that we're following. So right now, in the most important transition between Silica and Phosphorus. So imagine how beautiful the connection is that between a match in between the two navigation countries are trying to align, and silver and gold, Argentina and Switzerland, are trying to balance too. Right in between is a transition between Silica to Phosphorus, which is the most important story about the Philosopher's Stone, about the sword and the stone. It's like if everything was written previously, because of course everything is a code. But it's not a code because someone wrote about it. It's a code because simply the universe is a code. That's why we can see it as a game. We can also be in the other side, and we can also go to another type of comparatives. So of course we can go to the other side of the story and talk about the codes between Israel and Palestine, about the code in between the two Koreas, the code between Nigeria, about also Somalia and Somaliland. We can also talk about the conflict between Ukraine and Russia. Of course, there's so much to talk about them. But why I'm not talking about those topics? Because we are still trying to practice how to play without consciousness, without perception. So the reason why I never talk about this is because we are not ready for this conversation. Because most of people that is following me right now, they are asking for me to be in one side of the story or the other. So I won't enter that game. To me, to enter that code is not consciousness. So publicly, I'm not going to talk about that part of the game. So, of course, we can talk about matches in football because it's easier to practice how to see it. So I never care about football. I don't care. I don't care about who wins. I don't even care about my own country. I don't care. The only reason why I'm so focused about it is because so many people is focused in what is happening there that it's easier for us to understand codes that are in that game, that are happening there. It's easier to find things. So today, it starts a transition to this Philosopher's Stone. It begins the journey of the bearer of light, and therefore, the path of the shadows. So what I invite all of you to do today is to align each one of you with the idea of the Philosopher's Stone. So remember, what is the Philosopher's Stone? So, philos, feeling, sophe, which is thinking, thoughts, knowledge, wisdom, and under, in the lower chakra, in the root chakra, the stone. So what is the Philosopher's Stone? So the Philosopher's Stone can only be worked when we find coherence, balance, harmony between what I feel, what I think, and what I do. So this is the basis of the Philosopher's Stone. So in order for the Philosopher's Stone to work, what we have to do is to find the middle in between the two sides of everything in this game of perception. Feminine, masculine, wrong and right, dark and light, right and left. All of that needs to find center. That's why when we work with consciousness, we cannot believe or support the idea that one side is right and the other side is wrong. What we have to do is to find the middle point between both of them. An eye for an eye. Boat for a boat. Oak for an oak. So what is my invitation today, even if you don't like football, is to find the calibration in between a boat of the British, of England, and a boat of the Vikings. So these two boats turn into pirates when they are supposed to be captains. So we will focus in the two boats, a boat for a boat, England, Norway. And then we will go for an eye for an eye. The moon, silver, Argentina, and the sun, gold, Switzerland. Boat for a boat, eye for an eye. So what is the code of all of this? To balance, to find philosophy, which in this case, this philosophy is going to be called transition between silica to phosphorus. So today, take a match, watch the match, and light the candle for us to access phosphorus, which is the snake of light. So thank you for being there, for paying attention, and let's keep talking in the next days. Have a happy alchemy.